hand it over to Thomas Pyle and Joyner to discuss the League of Women Voters.
Hi, thanks. My name's Thomas Hunt. I'm a first-year master's student in statistics at UNF.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Payal Agrawal. I graduated in the spring 2021 from School of Computing in University of North Florida.
Hi all, my name is Joyner Johnson. I'm a graduate student at University of North Florida.
The title of our topic today is going to be Finding Insights in Florida Voter Participation. So our client is part of a national organization, the League of Women Voters US. This is a nonpartisan organization, which means they have no political party affiliation. The national group was founded roughly 6 months before the passage of the 19th Amendment that expanded the franchise to women. That was in 1920. The League of Women Voters, Florida specifically, was founded in 1939. It's currently made up of 29 local chapters around the state. Now, what all these tranches of the organization share in common is that they all aim to increase participation in government, plus education around public services. So some of the priorities of our client include legislative issues centered around public policy. They're heavily involved in registering returning citizens via Amendment 4. That's helping people who face felony convictions have their franchise restored. And it also includes voter services such as registration and education. For example, they have the Vote 411 text campaign where prospective voters can get information about how to get registered, when to vote, and different ways to vote. So the wicked problem that our client was formed around is access to voting. And we see that as a cornerstone of active participation in government. Another issue that they're trying to combat is access to information. So people who want to vote might not necessarily understand what the requirements are to keep their registration active. For example, updating it whenever they move from county to county. They also may not know what's required to maintain their active voter status. So the tools that our client has to combat this problem are publicly available data. So by using this data, we think that the League can make decisions with more complete information. And since we have more data publicly available than ever before, we believe our client can have a larger impact than they have. So just a reminder on the focus of our project. So we're looking at both voter registration and turnout in Florida. We're trying to analyze the ways in which geography can shape voting outcomes. And we're doing all of this with the goal of making recommendations to our client to increase voter registration and turnout around the state.
So for data analysis, initially we have taken publicly available raw data from the Florida Division of Elections. This raw data is of two types and based on 67 counties for each. And we would like to say thanks to Dr. Mike Binder for providing this data to us. The first type of data is the voter registration, and it has all the details of a registered voter like address, mailing address, gender, date of birth, and it has this file size of 1.6 million records with 38 attributes. Then the second type of data is the voter history. It has all the details of voter participation in the elections from the year 2006 to 2020. Each file has the size of 10 million records with 5 attributes like election type, election date, and history code. Based on some common attributes like county code and voter ID, later we combine these two types of files into single file for each 67 counties. After receiving such huge files, our next step was data preparation for voter registration files. First step was the data cleaning. In this step, we tried to maintain data security standards. Hence, we removed personal identifiable information for each voter. We also generated new column age from date of birth for our further analysis. During data cleaning, it was shocking for us and we came across two largest county files. Those were Miami-Dade and Broward County, and which were not handled by the Excel. Therefore, we need to split those two files into two sub-files using Pandas framework. The last step was the data extraction, where we extracted some key attributes for our final file like voter ID, county code, and residential zip code. Next, we moved on to the data preparation for voter history files of 67 counties. So we have gone through these 4 steps. And at the first, in data sorting, we organized each county files with a unique voter ID. Next, in the data filtration, we filtered the data based on the federal general elections held in the year 2012, 14, 16, 18, then 2020. In the third step, data extraction, we identified voting types used by each voter for the general elections. In the last step, we generated 67 flat files for each counties using Pandas framework. We would like to say thanks to Chad Gardner from NLP Logics, who patiently helped us in writing our Python scripts and made them more efficient and fast to run over such huge files. During the data preparation for voter history files, we faced some data challenges. We found at most 35,000 of duplicate and semi-duplicate records in a file. So our first challenge was to remove duplicate records from the prepared files. Then we handled semi-duplicate records, means those voter IDs which are present at 2 times with misclassified vote types in the same election year. So to resolve this issue, we decided to recode misclassified vote type as M. After handling all these data challenges, we were able to move to our next step, that is data merging. We merged 67 voter registration and voter history files on the basis of voter ID using left merge operation. So here we have finally our 67 county files. Those were generated after merging voter registration and voter history data for the federal general elections. On the left side of this slide, as we can see the final attributes, and most commonly are voter ID, registration county code, residential zip code, age, and vote type, vote indicator that has value 1 if voter has given his vote, or 0 if not. On the right-hand side of the slide, we can see the table for different vote types which we encountered in the data for general elections.
Once we have our combined voter registration and voter history files for all 67 counties, our next step in the project was to do some visual demos in order to answer the questions asked to FL-DSSG team. During this phase, we had 2 main challenges. First, the time constraint to model and evaluate all 67 county files. Second, the number of files, which make us to think to come up with some demographic criteria in order to group these county files. We had a lengthy conversation with our directors and mentors, which helped us to come forward with Florida's Metropolitan Statistical Map. This map was a turning point for the FL-DSSG team, because it helped us to bring down the number of files from 67 to 28 metro or micropolitan statistical area files. The largest MSA in the Florida is the Miami-Fort Pompano Beach, which includes highly populated county regions such as Palm Beach, Broward County, and Miami-Dade. Whereas the smallest metropolitan statistical area is the Panama City, which comes under Bay Area County. The other important micropolitan areas are Tampa, St. Petersburg, Orlando, Kissimmee, and Tallahassee. Some of the microstatistical areas are Key West, Lake City, and Wakulla. Other than these metro and micropolitan areas, Florida is also having some rural areas that's surrounded by Tallahassee. These areas are named as Jackson Liberty and Madison Zuami. Next slide, please. Once we have our statistical area files, our next challenge was to perform insightful analysis. We had several team meetings and came up with an interesting process of voter profile generation. This was an aha moment for the team, because this profile code generation provides a meaningful insights that helps our client to make decisions. In order to determine the voting behavior of voters, we classified them based on eligibility criteria and total vote counts on each general elections held between 2012 to 2020. There are mainly 6 types of voter profiles. According to the voter profile condition, we came to know that there is a group of eligible voters who participated in all general elections. And there are also a group of eligible voters who comes under increasing and decreasing profiles according to their voting participations on the past and recent elections. Whereas intermittent profile voters showed their participations in some elections, but not all. The never voted profile comprises of eligible voters who didn't cast their vote in any of these election years. Lastly, not eligible incorporates small group of non-eligible voters who did their voter registration at the age of 16 or 17. Now, let's discuss about some analysis side of our project. We use Tableau to do our visual demos. Here is a bar chart visualization for the frequency count table, which generated by each voter profiles on various statistical regions. In this chart, Miami-Fort Pompano Beach area is having the highest frequency count for all voter profiles. It is still having a large number of decreasing voters, even though it shows a positive sign in the increasing voter profile, which needs to be noted. Now, let's compare a metropolitan area with a rural area such as Jackson Liberty region. As you all can see, it is clearly noticeable that these rural areas having a large share of registered voters in the decreasing and never voter profiles. Since the league is not having local chapters in any of these rural areas, we suggest our client to expand your services to these rural areas and take a look on these voter profiles. To make our analysis more focused, we decided to do voter profile analysis on some of the metropolitan areas. A special thanks to Dr. Gordon Rakita to bring this fabulous idea into our minds. For the voter profile analysis, we aggregated the voter profile counts on the zip code level and generated these shading patterns on each regions. We filtered the count of voter profiles from the above average to extreme count. For example, in the Tallahassee MSA, we are having a darker color palettes in the zip code 32304, which comes under Leon County. This area is having mainly the student residents because it is near to the Florida State University. However, in the Tampa region, there is a high count of voters disengagement in the zip code 33647, which comes under Hillsborough County. This area intercepts I-75 and near to Pebble Creek and Tampa Pans. Next slide, please. Here is a voter profile analysis for the micropolitan statistical area such as Key West. The league is having the local chapters only in this micropolitan region. This MSC comes under Monroe County. It is having a darker shades under 33040 zip code, because this particular zip code is showing high count of voter profile disengagement.
Now to talk about some predictive analysis, I'd like to thank Dr. Tadeo from the UNF Math and Statistics Department for help, as well as Andrew Pontazzi for help with subject matter expertise. So what we did was we generated some boosted tree models, which is an advanced tree model that runs 50 decision trees and combines them with a weighted average. So our inputs are the information we have about voter registration and voter history from 2012 to 2018. And we were using that to try to predict our 2020 indicator variable, showing if a registered voter cast a ballot or not in that general election. So as you can see, these are the three largest metro areas that we have in the state. So the misclassification rate for all of them hovers around 22 or 23%. And what was noteworthy to me was that the top 4 column contributors, in other words, the top 4 variables that tell us what we know about our model, were consistent for those 3 metros. Respectively, they were zip code, age, 2018 vote type, and voter status, which indicates if a given voter is active or inactive. It has to do with the county supervisor of elections collecting that information. So what's noteworthy here, for one thing, is that we can look at the largest metro in the state for Miami area. The age variable for them contributes about double to that model what it does for the other 2 largest metro areas in the state. Now, collectively, all 4 of these column contributors account for over 75% of what we can predict using this model. And in fact, for Orlando and Miami, it predicts 80%.
As Thomas mentioned, that over 75% column contribution we found in the models for predicting 2020 voting participation. And we can note that in Miami-Fort Lauderdale Metro, age is playing an important attribute, that is 30%, which is more than the other two metropolitan areas. When we analyzed data on age splits, we came to know about the fact that the citizens under 40 years of age having less voting participation. Let's take a look on the regional analysis of Miami-Fort Lauderdale Metro based on the voters' age range from 18 to 41 years. The results are aggregated to the zip code level, and we have taken the count of registered people from more than average to the extreme number. We would like to say thanks to Victor Lee from Jacksonville Jaguars for sharing this idea of having the range from more than average to extreme on color bars in the maps. So for example, in the zip code 33157, it is one of the 6 zip codes having dark color intensity region. That means these are the areas where more awareness and campaigns are required among citizens under 40 years of age for their active participation in the elections. When we looked more into the zip code, we found interesting facts that this area is located near east of Miami Zoo, and Miami-Dade College is situated near to it. So we are assuming that there should be a high percentage of students in this area. Next slide, please. Moving next towards the regional analysis of rural areas in Florida, we grouped them together, and their names are Panhandle Jackson Liberty and Panhandle Madison Swain. On the map, as we can see, the results are aggregated to the zip code level and based on the voter profile who have never voted or disengaged from the voting. As we can see in Panhandle Jackson Liberty, the dark color intensity zip code is 32428. That is Chipley, Florida. That means this area have maximum number of registered people who have never voted or disengaged from the voting. When we looked further into the zip code, interestingly, we came to know about some facts that this area have less than the average population density, and people are large in the number who are in the age of late 20s to early 40s. Also, we found there is a Panhandle Technical College, which again may be the big area of students. After getting the deep insights from data, here are some recommendations for League of Women Voters of Florida. First recommendation, they need to target more on those voters who recently became inactive according to the voter registration data. Second recommendation is that League of Women should work more on the data collection part. As we know, they are comprised of 29 local chapters who are actively working on getting people registered for voting, and this will be good for them to keep track on the weak voting access areas. Our third recommendation is to start more chapters in micropolitan and rural areas of the state, as there are no chapters in the rural areas and only one chapter is there in the micropolitan areas. Our fourth recommendation for League is to start targeted campaigns for the citizens below 40 years of age, as during our analysis, it came in notice that this age group have less participation in the voting. Thank you, everyone.